To stop ISIS, let's bring in Republican Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen of Florida. Good morning, Congresswoman.
Well, good morning. Thanks so much.
Thanks for being here. So we understand President Obama is weighing his options as to how to tackle ISIS. What do you want to see the U.S. do?
Well, I think that we lost a real opportunity several years ago when the people in Syria were rising up, demanding freedom. The president then, just a little while ago, said we're going to do airstrikes and laid out the course of action. And then many of us in Congress said, yes, we're with you. He said, well, I'm going to come to Congress, seek authorization. And then he pulled the rug from under us and said, no, we don't have support, so I'm not going to get authorization. Now this situation has spiraled out of control. We have ISIL taking over large chunks of Syria and into Iraq. And if we're successful with helping the Kurds, arming them so that they can get rid of ISIL, little good will they'll do if they just find sanctuary in Syria. So this has morphed into a real cancer all over that area. So we've got to continue with our airstrikes in Iraq, help the Kurds, but also I think that he must come to Congress, get authorization to go into airstrikes in Syria as well. And you can't just do like whack-a-mole, whack them here. They're going to come out somewhere else.
But aren't airstrikes whack-a-mole? I mean, aren't airstrikes in Syria? Many of our military analysts have said that actually won't do the trick. You have to have people on the ground.
Nobody say no, for sure. Airstrikes, limited airstrikes, which is all that the president seems to be aiming for in Syria, is not going to defeat ISIL. But what we don't want to do is to have the Kurds do the fighting in Iraq, defeat ISIL or bring them back or get them out of there, and then have them pop up in Syria, and yet we do nothing there. Now, we've got to get our coalition forces. We already see that they were helping us, not the biggest Air Force and not the biggest Army folks, but we have countries that are willing to help us. We're not in this alone. And I know that sounds, oh my gosh, it sounds like Iraq all over again. But let's look at what we're dealing with. This is a group that's barbaric, that's not going to stop at just getting you know, a dam here and maybe lose it tomorrow.
Of course, yes.
They're going to keep on going. It's a threat to our interests.
So to be clear, are you saying
the president needs to lay out what his analysis is?
And to be clear, what you would like to see is more airstrikes in Syria, which I believe the president is considering, but you are not willing to go so far as to say that there should be forces on the ground.
No, and I think that the president has said that time and time again, that there won't be boots on the ground in Iraq. And when we were considering airstrikes in Syria a while ago, he also said no boots on the ground. We have superior technology that we can share with our allies, and we have fighters who can do the job, at least containing this threat and not have it continue to spread over to Jordan, to spread to Lebanon. I think we missed a great opportunity, but I know we can't look back.
About that great opportunity, let me ask you about that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we just had on the former U.S. ambassador to Syria on, and he said that notion that had we armed the Syrian rebels that this wouldn't be happening, he said that's a fallacy. And the reason he said that is because he said we spent 8 or 9 years arming and training the Iraqi army, and they fell apart at the first confrontation with ISIS. So he says, what makes us think that some ragtag band of rebels, had we armed them, that they wouldn't have fallen apart at the first sight of ISIS? What's your response?
Well, I think that arming rebels in Syria, which is different than the arming the Kurds in Iraq. That train left the station years ago when folks like John McCain, and they were saying, arm the rebels. Congressman Eliot Engel was saying that. Now it's too difficult to arm those groups because it's hard to know who the good guys are. And in fact, these strikes and arming them may work in favor of Assad. This has been turned around in such a malicious way. So what I favor is continuing the airstrikes in Iraq, continuing to arm the Kurds, do what we can to get allies involved in doing what we said we were going to do those airstrikes in Syria, have the president come to Congress and get authorization and see if we can contain this threat and then demolish this group. But we've got to try, but he needs to lay out what his scenario is. What is his strategy for this threat? And he has not laid that out. We don't know if it's to contain them in Iraq. Is it to defeat it? Is it to remove Assad from power? I don't know what his vision is, and he needs to lay that out to the American people.
Here's what the foreign minister of Syria has said about potential airstrikes in Syria. He released this statement on Monday. Any breach of Syrian sovereignty by any side constitutes an act of aggression. So are you saying, Congresswoman, that if we could not get their approval, if we could not collaborate somehow with the Syrians, that we should do airstrikes in their country anyway?
Well, I don't think that we should collaborate. I don't think that we should consult. I don't think that we should seek the permission of Assad. I don't think that he's going to do those belligerent acts as he says that he's going to do. You know, ISIS is a problem for Assad himself. And so this is a very muddled, tricky situation that we let get out of control by ignoring the threat. We wanted to say, hey, everything is fine. This has been a success, just like we did in Libya. And then we had so many problems there. They're still ongoing. So for Assad, the objective should not be removing him from power, but we certainly cannot be consulting with him and asking him for permission. Our goal is securing U.S. national security interests, and President Obama has to lay the case out to the American people about why this is an important fight and why we should share intelligence with our allies and partners who can defeat this enemy.
All right, Congresswoman Ros-Lehtinen, thanks so much for joining us this morning.